Vas a llevar los perros, ¿no? Perros.
I'm struggling with pronunciation as well.
Anything specific?
The R and the L.
L.
L after R. Girl.
Yeah, but you did that well.
Girl.
Most people have that problem.
My daughters have. My youngest daughter is.
She nails
teaching
it.
me
Yeah, okay. World. That's a hard one.
World. Marlboro.
Yeah. You do great, though.
In Spain, we say Marlboro.
Yeah. You guys avoid the
yes.
tricky sounds.
Yes. R and L. It's Carl's, but.
Yeah, because where you live.
Carl's.
And what about like masks and asked? Do you find those difficult? I thought about that a lot because with all the masks right now, yeah, you do that well.
Yeah, masks. Yeah,
those are called consonant clusters. I don't think we ever got into those when I was teaching you.
And water.
But you do that great.
Yeah, but the day that my younger daughter said, water? What do you say that? Water. And then I have a good teacher there.
Yeah, it's true.
Daughter.
Kids are the best teachers.
Yeah. You have to say this. You have to say this. And they correct you. My peers are not going to correct me.
I was thinking about that because I was thinking, like, one of the things I notice with living in Spain is you learn all these expressions from people that you live with, or like if you stay with a family, they use all these expressions. And I was thinking, I'm sure that in your family, you guys are speaking Spanish at home.
Yeah.
So you don't pick up on day-to-day vocabulary. One of the ones I always think of is to rinse off. You know that one?
No.
Like, we don't usually say, like, I'm going to take a quick shower. We say, I'm going to rinse off real quick. It means, like, rinse. It's kind of like a light shower.
Okay.
And I remember saying that to one of my Spanish roommates, like, I'm going to quick rinse off. And she was like, raindrop? Like, she didn't understand the expression. But then I realized, like, I bet living with kids, they use that kind of vocabulary. So you pick up on the day-to-day stuff.
And for example, one of the problems that I had is that the bad words. I know the bad words, but I don't know the level of bad words.
Yeah.
So my daughters are using bad words, but I don't know if it's a light bad word or a heavy bad word.
Yeah, so you don't know how to correct them, or
yes. So, well, we usually say, hey, don't say bad words, but I don't know the level of. In Spanish, I control them perfectly, but not in English.
What words are they using, out of curiosity?
What the heck? But it's.
That's perfect. Yeah.
That's perfect.
Heck is like the nice version of.
But at the beginning, I would say, don't say that. Because I don't know the level.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are some other words that I don't know.
Darn. Do you know that one? Darn.
Yeah. But that's one of the words that I learned there. Because I didn't know about this word before living in the US. So, well, it's learning.
Yes.
But our daughters are good teachers.
Yeah, it's true. Because then they'll also be the ones who have no problem telling you when you say something wrong.
Yes. Actually, they cracked up.
So yeah. And it's probably easier to receive from like your daughters than.
Well, if somebody corrects me, I'm fine. I'm completely fine because I really appreciate it. But I guess that the people are not doing that because they don't feel like maybe you're going to feel uncomfortable if I correct you or whatever, but I feel fine.
I think also people don't really know how or why something is wrong. So it's something I've had to sort of learn and improve on, because there are certain times when I've corrected people and then realized that it's not necessarily wrong, it's just different from my version or my colloquial way of speaking. Like every region has their own. So a lot of times people might not correct you because they're not sure if it's wrong. It just sounds different, but it sort of seems okay. And then you have to really know grammar to know if what somebody said was actually grammatically incorrect or just different, you know?
Yeah. And what I've seen as well is that sometimes a mistake provokes a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
I mean, I say something wrong, and instead of saying, the people saying, we don't understand, what do you say? They understand another thing.
Yeah. A
And that's
misunderstanding.
Yes, and I've been working as link between the factories here in Spain and the US, and I've seen it a lot of times.
That they
Those
misunderstand.
misunderstandings.
Yeah.
Because some mistakes or something like that, and instead of I don't understand you, no, I understand another thing,
Yeah.
and that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. You might like this course that we created because a lot of what we aim to improve, it's specifically for Spanish speakers, and it corrects common mistakes. But basically we did like a scale. We decided like how much of this is related to the potential for misunderstanding, how much of this is related to kind of annoying or causing your listener to get weary because you're like making a common mistake too often, and then how hard is it to correct. So like it's super easy to correct as long as you pay attention to it once in a while, or the embedded questions, those are really hard to correct, so it takes a while. So if it's a simple one to correct and it causes comprehension problems, like we're definitely going to include it in the course because like it's super simple and no problem. Whereas if it's a heavy one that takes a lot of time to correct, then it's only worth correcting if it really causes misunderstanding and like makes your listener weary. So then it's like, okay, we got to find the balance of whether it's worth it or not.
Okay.
I'm going to stop and introduce because this is super, I told you it's easy to just get going. So I'm Andrea Holm. This is the Andrea Holm podcast. And today I have a former student here, Juan, who, well, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm from Spain. I've been living in different cities, and 3 years ago I moved to the US with my family, 3 daughters and my wife, and it's been a really good experience.
A really good experience overall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell me and the listening audience the circumstances that led you to move to the US? Like,
yeah, I work in a Spanish company which merged with a US company 4 years ago, and then I moved there to work as a link between our factories there and our headquarters in the US.
The factories in the US and the headquarters of the company in the US. So it's a Spanish company merged with an American company?
Yeah. Nowadays it's a Spanish company. The headquarters are in Barcelona. And we say that there are another headquarters in San Diego in the US. But the company is located in Spain.
Okay. And your job was to work as like the liaison between the factories and the headquarters?
Yeah, the factories here in Spain.
Ah, okay.
And the US market, let's say.
Okay.
So we have several projects, and where I've learned about the difference, misunderstandings, and the different culture that we have.
Yeah, that's something I want to ask you about. So how do you see the work culture now that you've spent 3 years, you said, in the US?
Yeah.
Working primarily with other Americans at your headquarters?
Yeah.
So now that you've spent those 3 years there, how could you, what do you see as the comparison between the Spanish working culture, the Spanish professional culture, and the American professional culture? Like, what are the biggest differences that you notice?
Processes.
Processes.
Yes, in the US, everything has a process. Everything. So at the beginning, you can see that we have to create a process, and they are really, really good at that. Here in Spain, we can adapt to changes faster. In the US, it takes time to create the process. But once the process is created, you have very few problems. Here we have more problems. We don't have a process. We have process, but it's not our culture. It's not so hard. So you can see that difference is they are not as flexible as us, but they have less problems. So
in general, do you find it to be more efficient than in the US?
yes, and everybody has a job description, and they don't do anything out of their job description. At the beginning, I was thinking about that. They are not flexible. We are much more dynamic in Spain, but with the time, you see that it's better, because if there's a problem, a mistake, or a failure, you know who's the responsible.
Who the person responsible is.
Yes. and here in Spain, you know it, but this person probably is doing that and this and this and this. So it's very common to think about, okay, this person is doing so many things that it's normal.
Yeah, the blame doesn't really fall on his shoulders.
Yes, and there it's very clear. And if there's a change or a growth or something like that, you see the lack of resources very fast because nobody is doing it. So here, you can give more work to somebody. Hey, can you do this while?
It's true.
And
I see that
finally,
here too.
this will be a task that this person will be doing for the rest of his life. And so you can see there that the lack of resources are very clear.
Yeah, because nobody is asked to take on additional tasks, but rather somebody new is hired to play that role.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's good.
I always think that when you move to another culture, because this has happened to me several times, the first thing that you notice is sort of the stereotypes. So it's like the US is inflexible, for example, because it takes a while to go from only seeing what they do different from how you do it and why that's maybe doesn't work, to sort of seeing the underlying aspects of it. I remember when I came to Spain, I thought the family units are so tight that it doesn't really allow for much independence. Like, kids are living with their parents when they're in their late 20s, 30s. And because of that, their parents are still cooking for them and they don't learn to be independent. And I remember thinking it's like a country of children, sort of. It's everyone's being mothered in a way. But that was only seeing things from my American mindset. And over time, I started to notice how much more emotionally balanced people seemed. I think because they have that family unit and those long enduring friendships that sort of give you peace in your soul. And in the US, things are constantly changing. So you're very independent, which is great. But on the other hand, I think people are sort of terrified of being alone, of not being able to cover costs, of being homeless all of a sudden, because you don't have that net catching you. Yeah. And I definitely have the feeling that we have more mental illness issues or drug addiction or alcohol addiction problems in the US. I could be wrong, but over time I saw how it was more complex than my first.
Yeah, we can see that different. Our daughters, since when we arrived, they said, we want to do cheerleading.
Ah, yeah.
Okay, let's do it. And
Can you tell us how old they are before you go into that?
when we arrived, when we got to the US, they were 5, 8, and 10 years old.
And their level of English was mixed.
Our youngest daughter didn't know a word of English. Nowadays she laughs at me because of my English. And our 2 elder daughters, yes, they already knew some English or something like that, but it's very different to have a class here in Spain in English at the school that arriving to the US, and the first class with an American teacher with the American kids, and that was a shock.
Yeah, they must have really.
Yeah, but well, nowadays they are doing really, really well. You can see their learning curve. My learning has not been a curve. So I don't know. Maybe after 1 year they already had a much better English than.
Do you feel that after a year they were essentially fluent?
Yeah, I mean, I could be fluent at work, but not in a regular conversation to talk about the weather or whatever. But they already had that English, the pronunciation, and
yeah, the intonation.
Yes.
Yeah, the colloquial phrases. Yeah. So they wanted to be cheerleaders. All 3 of them?
There are 3 of them. They wanted to be cheerleaders, and they are still doing that, and there are 4 or 5 competitions per year. So when we go to a competition, in our team, there are a few dads, a few fathers. Most of them are mothers, but we are a family, we're going. And so you can tell the difference. And then you see other teams from other areas from California with a lot of people from Mexico and so on. And you see the parents, the grandparents, the whole family is there. And you can tell the difference.
Yeah.
So I think in Spain we are more Latinos.
Yeah.
And we love that.
I was thinking about that earlier when you first arrived here, that you said you've been traveling so often on the weekends. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking it's probably really good for your kids, because in the US, it's quite common for kids to just go off with their friends on the weekends or to not spend that time as much with family. Mm-hmm. Whereas in a way, it's sort of maintaining your Spanish culture to do these trips as a family, like even as your daughter is becoming a teenager. And
Yes, and we live in an apartment and we are receiving visitors. For example, my parents have been there this year for 5 weeks in the apartment, and I talk to some peers and they say, 5 weeks in an apartment?
In a 3-bedroom apartment.
Yes,
with
that actually they think that an apartment for a family is very, very small, and it's like our house here in Spain.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, we like to do that. We're a family. And yesterday we were in a house, my parents-in-law house in a village, and there were 20 of us sleeping there. Some people sleeping in a van, and we like that they are living that part of our culture.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like you can take the best of Spanish culture and the best of American culture and sort of use it to your advantage. Yeah. I think it's cool.
Yeah, but the US is so big that I can see that after university they go to another state maybe or whatever. They start to work in another state, and the distance are so big that it's difficult to keep um, a relationship like here in Spain. That
Yeah.
you can travel.
We say
everywhere.
a close knit like family relationship or yeah. It's true. It's like what I see here in Spain is most people see their parents or the grandparents or whatever on the weekends or for lunch one day a week or more. And in the US it's almost unthinkable. I don't know to what extent my experience is based on where I'm from, but I'm from the Midwest, so I would assume that people tend to be closer to home there. But even in my own family, we all spread out quite a bit, like different states, and we definitely don't see our parents every week.
Yeah, sure. Well, I have some peers that they see their parents for Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah, that's very common.
That's all.
And you take turns with the in-laws. Like this year we have Christmas with my family, and next year we have Christmas with your family. Or yeah.
So that's different.
And have you noticed any other like maybe stereotypes that at the beginning seemed very, I don't know, frustrating to you, and then over time seemed like a positive thing, or the opposite?
Well, one of them was the that they are not flexible, the job description and so on. That it shocked me at the beginning, but nowadays I really appreciate it. Another stereotypes, I don't know, because I think one stereotype is that we think that everybody in the US has the same way of living and the same way of thinking, but the US is huge.
Yes.
So there are different people. I mean, I usually think about there are 5 groups of people in the US: the Californians, the people who hate Californians, New Yorkers, the people who hate New Yorkers, and the people who hate Californians and New Yorkers. So no, but it's a joke. But you can see that the people from California, from Texas, from Oregon, Midwest, whatever, it's different.
Yeah.
They are different. So the way of living and so on. So that was, I think, a stereotype that everybody in the US is the same because it's a country. But it's so big that
it's easy to think that also because of the way the media sort of displays the US often. Like they'll do those news clips where they ask somebody like, where is or what's your favorite country outside of the US, and they say a city, or like they just look very ignorant, or and I always say, like, of course there are some people like that in the US, and then there's the complete opposite, people who've spent a lot of time traveling, or yeah it's easy to sort of get the wrong impression from what media sells. Yeah
I mean, we live in Southern California, and I've been living in Madrid for 9 years, and the mix of people that there's in California, it's not you cannot find it in Spain.
Yeah, all the different cultures, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I have at the office I have colleagues from India, from Japan, from Europe, and from Latin America. So I'm in good positions and everywhere. So there's a mix, and if you go for a walk, you can see a lot of different people. That's natural.
Yeah.
So
I always think about that with respect to English, because I'm trying to find the best way to teach English, and I don't know that it's really worth teaching sort of like what we consider an American accent, or like expressions and phrasal verbs, because it can be so regional. And I see from teaching that phrasal verbs are super complicated to learn. And if you work in an international atmosphere, then why bother teaching people this native phrasal verb expression that all native speakers of English would use? But if, I don't know, now it must be a greater and greater percentage every day of your coworkers that come from other countries. So you don't necessarily have to speak like comfortably as one of them, one of the Americans, but rather you need to find a way to communicate, to express yourself in a way that's comfortable and where everyone can understand you.
Yeah.
What have you found? Do you wish to sound like a native speaker of English, or do you like maintaining a certain sense of personality that's comes from being from Spain and the different vocabulary that you use with respect to that? Or
Well, as always, I would like to have a better level of English, but our middle daughter this year at the school, she had the graduation because she's going to from elementary school to middle school, and in the graduation, all the kids were saying a sentence. So we didn't know what our daughter was going to say. And she said, "My accent is what defines me."
oh, that's
And it
beautiful.
was like, whoa, we didn't know. We didn't know that she was going to say that, but it was really nice. And yes, I like that.
Yeah,
Our accent is what defines us.
yeah,
I'm happy with our accent.
yeah.
It would be great to have a better level of English and a better grammar, but we have to think that it will never be perfect.
Exactly.
So it's like, maybe this is what we are. So we have to be happy with that.
Yeah, and it's like the way they say like a scar or some like difficult struggles that you've been through in your life end up making you stronger or define you. In a way, like showing that you've come from another culture and another country and you came with your whole family, it really is like a huge source of power that not everyone has. But I wonder how would you recommend to somebody if they were like trying to improve their English or planning to move to the US and with their family or something? Would you recommend that they try to improve their grammar so that they don't make grammar mistakes? They try to get a broader vocabulary so they have more words to choose from? Or that they try to improve their accent, their pronunciation, so that they could be understood clearly?
At the beginning, when we got to the US, I was really concerned about my grammar, vocabulary, and so on. But from the beginning, I realized that the pronunciation, the accent, was really important because maybe you are using the right grammar, the right vocabulary, but they are not understanding you.
Yeah.
So even in very basic things, I mean, mountain. I was saying mountain, and what do you say? Mountain. Okay, so you can see mountain. My daughter taught me about that word. So you can see that maybe I think there has to be a balance. Okay. You cannot be studying without talking and listening, and the pronunciation is based on that. So there has to be a balance, but the pronunciation is very, very important for me.
And as an adult, I mean, for example, I know as kids, you can sort of just absorb that stuff, and it takes root in your brain and it comes naturally. But as an adult, I often tell people to like focus on listening and sort of mimicking, like shadowing or repeating, reading out loud. But if you don't have like a private coach working with you, do you think it helps to watch TV in English or listen to podcasts, or do you think like you actually have to be speaking out loud with somebody correcting you? How would you recommend improving that? Because you have improved, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I hope so. And but I think you have to do everything. I mean, it's really good to listen to podcasts and so on. Nowadays, I still do that. I'm still listening to podcasts and so on. There's a part of because of the business, it's good to listen to this podcast, but I don't listen them in Spanish. I only listen them in English.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, very important to listen to podcast or whatever in English. But it's really good to practice because otherwise maybe there's no a connection or the connection, like you say, when you're kid, it's there, the connection, but when you're older, the connection is not there. You have to create it.
Yeah.
And language, practicing the language is so important
Mm-hmm.
that I could tell that when we got to the US, I had never lived out from Spain. My wife had lived in the US and in Ireland.
And you
What
could tell a difference.
huge difference.
Huh?
It's a
Wow.
huge difference. But and nowadays our daughters correct my wife from time to time. So it's like, ooh.
Yeah.
So I think, like I said, there's a balance. It's good to do a bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what has been the greatest thing that you feel you've gained from living in the US these last 3 years?
For example, now, 1 month ago, some relatives visited us, and my wife and I had to work, so they were traveling with our daughters. They were the translators. They were they
Tour
were
guides.
yes, the tour guide. They were talking to the people at the stores, the restaurants, everywhere. So they are already independent in for us a foreign country, but for them it's not a foreign country anymore. So that was really, really good,
Mm-hmm.
really cool. And now you can see that they have an open mind. They have been struggling, I'm sure, at the school because of their accent, because of their English, and so on. And it made them stronger.
Yeah.
So it's really, I'm really happy because of our daughters.
Uh-huh.
For us, it's an experience, a professional experience, a personal experience. Because here I used to travel 3 weeks. When I was in Spain, I used to travel 3 weeks per month. And then the weekends, I was visiting our families, our friends. So when we moved to the US, we became a very
Close-knit
close-knit
family unit.
family union. So COVID started, but even without COVID, it's been a really, really good experience.
Mm-hmm. What about staying or coming back to Spain? How do you feel like, what are your short-term and long-term goals? Do you hope to come back soon? Do you feel that you could stay long-term?
Well, the company is interested in extending our contract there, my contract there. So at this point, we think COVID taught us that we cannot think in long term.
Yeah, that's true.
So we think about our next 2 years. So we will stay there for another 2 years, and we'll see what will happen.
We'll see. It's a great expression. And what about, do you have any funny stories? Like some strange misunderstanding or something funny that happened because of the difference in culture?
Be- mm,
I
some
feel
of
like people always have some funny story in their pocket.
I don't have a good memory. My wife does. So, um, I'm thinking about our neighbors. They are from. We have some neighbors from Texas. The first day that we invited them for dinner, I didn't get a word. It was what they are talking about. It was really, really hard for me to understand them. Um, and then my wife cooked up paella and pulpo a la gallega, the octopus. And it's nowadays, um, these neighbors said that they had never had a better dinner
Oh,
like
really?
that. That it was amazing.
The best meal of their
The best
lives.
meal of their lives. So what we did is we started to invite friends, peers to for dinner. So now my wife's paellas are quite popular. And then we started to take some photos with a Polaroid of the visitors. And so we have the fridge full of photos of people. And that's nice. That's really, really nice. It's not a funny story, but it's
No, it is.
so well. We are enjoying there a lot, but you can see that we have different culture. We are much more social.
Then you were here? You were social here, but more with like a smaller group.
Yeah, there we are more open to everybody
Mm-hmm.
to learn about them, and most of the people are looking forward to coming to our house and enjoying our gastronomy and our stories, and that's really good.
Have you noticed that people in general have a positive opinion of who's coming from Spain? Do people seem to have any sort of opinions, or do they know much about Spain?
Well, they know about Barcelona and Madrid.
They know it exists.
Yeah, and some people have visited some places of Spain, but no, for them it's not really popular place, and for some people, we have to say we are from Spain, northern Spain, close to France. Okay.
So they can locate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you can understand it. If you say you're from Minnesota, where is Minnesota?
Yeah. Yeah. Europe is like one country compared to one country with a lot of different states.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that the US is one country with a lot of different states in a way.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's good. I mean, what the people say is sometimes is, where do you come from? Because your accent is not from Latin America.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. If
people say, are you from Italy? Are you from or something Argentina? Or where do you come from? Because they don't. There are a lot of people from Latin America in California, especially from Mexico, but they can tell that your accent is different.
Mm-hmm.
So
I was wondering if they seem to have like, I always thought, coming from Minnesota, and this might be different somewhere else, but that Europe for Americans is this like exotic, historic, like fine dining cultural place.
mm-hmm.
And I don't think we have the same opinion of Central and Southern America, which is maybe an error because they also have a lot of culture and fine dining and all those beautiful things.
Mm-hmm.
But just the fact that you're from Europe, I think that Americans tend to see it as like very exotic. It's also much further.
Yeah.
But have you noticed anything to that extent where you're seen as being sort of an exotic creature for having come from Europe?
Yeah. You can see that they once they know that you're from Europe, they start to ask you some questions. But it's normal. I mean, in where we live, there are a lot of people from Latin America, but there aren't as many people as there are not so many people from Europe.
Yeah.
There are some. So, yes, there are some, but I would say that maybe for if you find one Spanish guy, you will find 1,000 people from Mexico. So the scale is
Yeah.
huge. So for them, once they know that you're from Europe, they start to think to ask you questions.
They show more interest. Or
Yes. Have you been in Paris? And I say, yes. Actually, from my hometown, it takes 8-9 hours driving to Paris, and for them, they would go once per month. It's only 8 hours driving.
Yeah.
But it's no. I go by plane.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, but for them it's very exotic, like you say, coming from Europe. They have a lot of questions, and even you find people who know a lot of history from Europe, even from Spain, and it's surprising.
Yeah, I remember in school that European history was a subject that you could take. But like Latin American history wasn't in high school. So I think, I mean, obviously a lot of our ancestry comes from Europe, so maybe that's part of it. But
yeah, and you can tell that in some areas of the US there are some people from Sweden, some people from Denmark, and so on. The Midwest, Minnesota.
A lot of Germans, a lot of Norwegians.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can see that, and maybe because of that they look at Europe more than to Latin America.
It's kind of our personal history. Yeah.
But I think that it's changing, because now there are so many people from Latin America, in California, Texas, a lot of states, Florida, that now Latin America, I think it's much more present.
I've heard that in less than 20 years, Spanish will be more prevalent in the US than English. There will be more Spanish speakers as like a first or second language than native speakers of English, I think. I think that's what I learned.
Well, probably, yeah, because where we live, most of the restaurants or whatever, you can read it in on the menu or whatever in English and in Spanish. And we receive the emails from the school in both English and Spanish.
Huh. Well, that's nice.
Yes. For us, yeah.
Well, I think our hour is up. It was great to hear your impressions from your...
Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, and I hope we can do this again after another 2 years, maybe.
Okay, it will be great.
Awesome. Thank you for being here.
Okay, thanks a lot.